Let's go into scarlet colored glasses here,
Okay.
and we can talk about the state kind of the program right now. This first part, and then we're going to end the second part talking specifically on a defense, do a defensive breakdown. Last week with Aaron Sorensen of Hale Varsity, we did the offensive side, but right now, I guess just in terms of timing. Yesterday was the last day of fall camp. Fall camp is done. Today was a day off, and then tomorrow,
The
Tuesday,
hay is in the barn.
The hay is in the barn. Tomorrow, Tuesday, whatever that is, August 16th, that is officially the start of Northwestern Prep.
Yep.
And so I guess just take us through right now, kind of where are we at right now, August 15th. We're transitioning from camp to Northwestern. You know, where's the team at kind of in your eyes?
I'm sorry, the last part. Where's it at?
Where's the team at in your eyes right now from what you've seen and heard and talked to the coaches and all that, talk to the players?
Well, Matt, here's the deal. I think they had a good camp. And if only that there were no major injuries. I mean, two frontline guys, Dakotas Crawford suffered an unfortunate injury, major knee injury, but no frontline players suffered major injuries, and they were very cognizant of that even yesterday. I think they got out of camp in a pretty good place mentally and physically. They did that kind of interesting. I've never seen this where they went 3 days on and one off, 3 days on, one off, and they're going to continue that right into Ireland. Maybe that helped. The two scrimmages I thought were, and I didn't see them. I want to be very clear on that, but I talked to people who did, and they seemed like they were productive on both sides of the ball. There's definitely guys that have emerged. I don't think there's been too many disappointments. I mean, Tommy Hill's been I'd say a big story during camp. Mm-hmm. O'Shawn had a big scrimmage yesterday, a very sort of eye-opening scrimmage where he was, that type of player that you envision. I mean, I've never heard anybody say he's like Randy Gregory, but kind of trending toward that sort of player.
Steve, any talk of the running back separation?
Yeah, definitely. And, I talked to somebody about, I would say a source today about that when I was, in fact, I was driving home to do this. Separation, I'd say Anthony Grant has separated to a degree. I mean, I think he'd be if they were to play today or tomorrow, he'd be the starter. Mm-hmm. There's not a big separation, but that's definitely a development but you know what? I have the depth chart sitting right here when they came out of the pre-camp depth chart, and he was number 1 on that. Mm-hmm. I'm sure Frost would just love that I'm saying that, but let me look. Yeah, he was 1 going into camp, and Yant was 2, Ramir was 3, Irvin 4, AJ Allen 5, Emmett Johnson 6. Now, what I would say now, it's Anthony Grant, but I'd say Irvin made a big move.
Oh, good.
Yeah, Irvin made a big move and would probably be in that 2 slot, or maybe an or with him and Yant. And then Ramir's gone. Ramir's interesting because he's now almost equal parts running back and slot.
Yeah.
So you'll see him a lot. And then another development, I'd say a pretty sizable camp development is AJ Allen. Where I've been told he's their best open field runner. I'd be surprised. The two freshmen that I think would exceed that 4-game redshirt stipulation would be Ernest Hausman and AJ Allen right now. I don't know if there's another one in there, but there might be.
I know Jim in Minnesota. Jim in Minnesota is going to be happy to hear that about. Yeah, right there. He's an AJ Allen fan, so for him to hear that, I know.
Hey, Sip,
I don't know about that, Jim. That's I haven't watched him in practice. Back when Amon was playing, we did see a lot. They would let us go over there at that time for the. It was pretty funny. There was when Amon was a freshman. Now was that Frank? That would that have been no? That would have been Tom, right? Was that Tom? My memory's starting to escape me, which is a little scary, my wife says. But okay, so Amon was a true freshman.
95 would have been his freshman year.
Yeah, that's Tom. Yeah. So I remember that practice. Very well because the media, there wasn't much media for one thing. There's always four of us. And I was standing on the field for some reason. I was like way too close to it. And I remember when they first put Amon with the ones. And it was like, okay, that's pretty big. He's a freshman. He's with the first team offense. Now, I don't know about AJ Allen if he's like Amon Green yet. He might be. I'd be a little surprised if that's the case. But the fact that he's sort of established himself this early is a great sign.
That is.
Great sign.
Hey, Sip, I got a question about Irvin because I can't remember if it was you that was talking about it or somebody else because I listened to all those shows later on his podcast. And talking about one of his biggest issues last year was his lack of size, right? Because he was a young kid and he just
that wasn't me talking.
Okay. Okay. Well, and they say that this year he's gotten into better physical shape as far as just like hitting the weight room, hitting the program, doing everything he's supposed to be doing. And I'm curious, do you think that he's emerging like that because of that, or is it a lot of it have to do too with the style of offense that Whip's going to be running this year?
Yeah, that's a good question. The size, I thought he was fine last year. Style of offense, he's definitely a downhill runner. And I think he would benefit from being under center. But I think he could play regardless. Here's the deal with him. And this is what he's told me. I interviewed him this summer. He's definitely a rhythm running back. And so he says it might take me a little while to find that rhythm, but once I do, it'll work. Now, here's the thing. And what I always say about Gabe Irvin is when we were at Oklahoma covering that game, I'm sitting with Parker Gabriel and Chris Basnet. And at the time I said, Irvin's fine. I'd never talked to him at that point, but I said, he's settled into a rhythm. He didn't have big numbers before his knee injury, but he was going to go for 50 yards on that carry. If you watch it. And that's what he says. He's going for 50. And I told those guys, he's starting to find, you can tell he's confident. He's running more. You can just see it. You guys can see.
Totally agree.
And that's why it was so unfortunate when he blew that in that play. And he did say, he said, yeah, he goes, I did. I was starting to feel comfortable. So he's a freshman. That was the fourth game, right? Third or fourth game. And he, so I'm excited to see what he's got. When I talked to him, I've said, when I talked to him this summer, he was legitimately like a horse kicking a stall. He was so jacked. He just wants to play so bad. And you know what, guys? One of the things this summer, I did interview a lot of guys. They have a lot of good kids and kids that are here ready to roll. I mean,
100% agree.
I think they have a good bunch of guys whose heads are in the right spot. They brought in, I'm telling you guys, you've seen enough interviews with O'Shawn, probably, maybe even Stephon Wynn, maybe Devin Drew. They didn't bring in clowns now.
No.
These guys are serious dudes, and here for good reasons. They did a great job in the portal. I mean, they did a grade A job of going and getting guys.
Let's go. Let's go.
Sip, when we had you on back in March, we started to kind of try to do some projection stuff, which albeit that's way too early. It wasn't even spring ball yet, all that. But, we were trying to pick the first 6 games and all that. But a lot's happened, obviously, since then. And
a lot always does.
I'm showing some other, here's some tweets from some other people here. Brett McMurphy had us in his preseason top 25. Here, this Will Mead guy says, Nebraska -12. Nebraska plays Northwestern Ireland. I think Nebraska is this year's Michigan State. They will surprise everyone, win the Big Ten West. Frost finally has his QB in Texas transfer, Casey Thompson. Adam McClintock, who we've had on the show, College Football Matrix. He had us originally at 7-5. Now he has us at 8-4. And this is him using his analytics, which in the past, his analytics would have us at 3-5 a couple years ago, and 6-6, 5-7, that kind of stuff. So using the same numbers. My point behind all this is it's creating this this there's starting to become a narrative of, well, 7.5 is what Vegas says, but geez, 8 and 4. I mean, the projections are starting to get higher, and it's not just coming from Rob, who I guess I'll give Rob this. I'll give this Rob too. Rob did change his Twitter handle here to whatever 3.3%, which is our chance of going 15-0 according to college football professors. So I guess. Do you feel some of that same compared to when we talked back in March, where you were very hesitant to want to even, give wins or losses? I mean, are you feeling comfortable when Nebraska's making a bowl game? We're definitely getting that 7 or 8 wins minimum. I mean, where are you, or are you like, no, let's cool that. So where are you at?
Well, I mean, it's that discussion evolves in my mind. And one way it would evolve one way or the other is camp and getting through it. What's the injury situation look like? You guys have been following it for a long time. There's been times when they've suffered some pretty debilitating injuries in camp. I mean, I like Quentin Castile. I remember when that happened, I thought, oh, that's not good. They had backs at that point, but like they didn't have anything like that happen. I don't know. That was a random one, but you know how it is. They've had they'd have guys go down, or just camp was rocky. Something would happen. There's so many instances that here's an instance. Bill Callahan approaches the media corps and tells us that Harrison Beck is not around and they don't know where he's at.
That's right.
Sip,
I was thinking of Doug DeBose back in the 80s. Didn't he get a knee injury in preseason?
Yeah, he blew out his knee. You're right.
Yeah, I'll never forget that, watching the 10-11 news and listening to that and thinking that our season was over.
Oh, you guys, if you stop and think, we can probably almost go year to year. And it's always, God dang, during the Pelini era, camps were ridiculously rocky. It was almost a nightmare at times. But, you had the Bubba Starling one year. You had that kid from Millard blow out his knee, and the World Herald guy reported, and Bo blew a gasket and take us all out of practice for about a week and a half. No interviews, no nothing. So that's what I'm talking about. Nothing like that though. So like it's been very smooth from that standpoint, and that affects the way I look at it. I'm just like everybody or a lot of people in that I'm tempted to pick 8, but I just can't. You just get burned so many times that I'm not going to do it. I just say 7, but I feel pretty safe at 7. And here's the deal. They're not great. They don't have great talent. They don't. It's good though. And
is it better talent than a year ago?
I mean, I think
I asked that. We had Michael Severe on back in June, and that was his thing right away. He goes, we've got better talent. Just right off the top, we had a pure talent discussion, and his take was we're a more talented team. Now, whether talent leads to wins or not, that's another discussion. But right now, just talking pure talent, he was like, and he went kind of across the board. And we used one of his tweets, and that he had said that and it was defensive line and linebacker and wide receiver. I mean, you name the position group, it's better, is what his thoughts.
Yeah, I might not be quite as emphatic as Michael, because they had 2 second rounders. I mean, those Jurgens and Cam Taylor-Britt were good players, and still he's really playing well in the Miami camp. By the way, I think I think still he might make that.
More still in.
JoJo was getting rep with the second team defense in Indianapolis this weekend, so that was pretty nice to watch.
Yeah, and like I said, Stilly I think could make that 53 in Miami. I don't know if I sign off on it quite as emphatically. I think across the board, though, they're pretty good. Like, but you saw though what Jerry DiNardo tweeted when he got to Maryland, and that was, I think, the 5th stop on the BT and bus tour, and he said Maryland was the most talented team they've seen, and they've been at Nebraska. So you want to. I don't want to go too far. I like what they have. But they're not so good that they're going to be able to have letdowns and expect to beat good teams. I mean, I just think come on, what I'm getting at here is if they're going to get to 8 or 9, they're going to have to win close games. That's what it's all about to me. That's what the whole discussion has become about to me. You got to win close games because you're going to play a ton of them. You got to figure out how to do it. So you got to tighten a lot up tighten a lot of things up. Whipple's alluded to it. I think Whipple doesn't talk about it that much, but I think it's very much part of the reason he's here. And I think they've looked at it very closely. He's talked about late game situations and guys having a better understanding of what they need for a first down late, be able to understand clock and where the ball is and what you need to get done, where the kick line is. They've talked about that. Just little things that a lot of the players just don't. None of them are all that well versed on it. You got to coach that, and I think to me, they're pretty comparable to a lot of the Big Ten teams. Are going to have to win close games. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. Hey, Rob, Boomer, what do we have right now for some questions? We probably want to get to some of those before we get to defense here.
Yeah, here's a quick one from Fogway. Sip, you've seen Osborne and Solich's practice intensity. How does Frost's compare from what you've been able to see?
It's intense. Yeah, I'm going down the road. I mean, come on. I mean, the Osborne years were ridiculous. They were. I mean, it was
unfair.
It was. I mean, that's the. Fortunately, and unfortunately, I was able to see a lot of that, and the standard got so high, and it was a different time too. They couldn't practice like that now. They're not even allowed to practice like that now. I always tell people, there's vivid memories I have when they would do the goal line drill. You know, I was pretty young in the job, and when they would get in the goal line drill, I didn't feel comfortable. I mean, it was violent. I mean, it was legitimate violence playing out before your eyes, and it was eye popping for me.
That's amazing.
You know, they wouldn't even let the first string running back in there. You know, for fear he wouldn't come out alive, and it was. So that you don't see a lot of that, and even that but that carried into the Callahan years. You know, they still practice. They could still beat the hell out of each other in 2005, and you know I saw Richie and Carricker go at it one time. That was illuminating, and they stopped the practice. They went. They started swinging helmets, and they had to stop the practice. Those are things I remember. I remember Randy Gregory and Alex Lewis going at it hard enough that it got so intense they had to pull Alex off the field for the day. I don't know if you see that kind of stuff anymore, but I've seen just two practices, 40 minutes. It's intense. It looks like it should to me.
Do we have some intensity from the O-line? Because some of the guys you just mentioned there, O-linemen, and that's a question I've had with some people I've been talking with too about. You know, that is an area where we really need to, whether it is the incognitos or you go back to Rayola's, where's that leader? Where's that guy that if guys are jumping off sides, someone's in their face. If guys are making mistakes, you know, a lot of times from the offensive line, you need some kind of vocal leadership. Do you see somebody on the line right now being that?
Yeah, Corcoran. Yeah, he's
Corcoran is.
Yeah, Turner's the guy that they would turn to in those situations. I like that group. They don't have a star. They don't have a Donovan. You know, they don't have a Donovan Raiola or Richie, but they do have. Turner could be that guy. You know, he's just. Last year he didn't practice much in August, and just never. He wasn't very confident because his body wasn't in where he wanted it to be. He's fine now. He just had a concussion. Is all I say all he had a concussion, so he missed some days, but he's been back for the last 3 practices.
3 practices.
Yeah, he's fine.
What's interesting about the O-line, you hear that you know maybe that they don't have a star there, but I guess, and maybe this goes back to what Mickey Joseph talks about with like it doesn't matter what you're recruited and you got to prove it, but that O-line has 3 top 100 recruits on it. I mean, you'd think if it's just about pulling out
and they don't really need to be amazing for us to win. If they were just serviceable last year and wasn't a detriment with the penalties and the holds, all that.
Don't lower your standards. They need Richie and those guys we talked about, Richie and Raiola and Finoti. Those guys were not just serviceable.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this year's team.
You need some guys like that.